Oh, did you guys fill out the survey for the transbuser?
The one from Wampo?
Probably.
Bel Air survey.
Oh, the one that we, yeah.
It's on Survey Monkey
Right.
too. So.
Oh, they probably have that. I don't.
Some
Nobody
people
needs
likes
one.
that.
We need them to come
I
out
did
here.
it already.
Did yours on Survey Monkey?
Which for that purpose is just fine.
I was telling Ty, about 6:45, close to 7 o'clock in the morning, this little old man comes from the south, and he goes over to Catholic Care. And then he leaves Catholic Care about 3:30, 4:45, riding a bicycle. And he did that when it was cold and snowy. He's still doing it.
Yeah, that's, Ellie's husband has ridden every day for what, like last 7 years or something? I mean, he has not missed one day regardless.
Well, I assume this little man works at, he's probably a janitor at Catholic Care or something, because that's where he goes in and comes out of. But I thought, riding a bicycle? That's
If you
cool.
look at the way the folks all talking at Wampo, that's the wave of the future, walking and biking.
Well, that's fine, but when it's 11 below or close
I get
to
it.
it,
I
forget
understand.
that.
I think it's like
I'm not saying that I'm fully behind all that because I don't see how
I
it's
got
all
one
gonna
hanging
work.
up in
But
my garage. Does anybody want
that's
it?
what some of them talk.
they say everything's cyclical, you know.
Yeah.
Like years and years ago, it was walking because you didn't have
I want to see the
cars.
bikes with the big front tire in the
Yeah.
middle. All right, guys. Yeah, we've got 6:30. Let's go ahead and get started. And I want to welcome back Jeff Best with LK Architecture here. Last time you were here, we had a long discussion about all kinds of things park related, and so tonight we look at different concepts. We can pare it down, then we'll know kind of what it is that we can talk about and decide what we can do at a future meeting. So I'll turn it over and let you get started.
Hello, everybody, again. What you have in front of you is actually two concepts, and on the very last sheet, there's a cost estimate that goes with each. Each of these fundamentally are very similar to each other. They have the same pieces, the same parts, actually even to some degree the same arrangements. Now they are somewhat different in layout, but as we go through the first one, we looked at doing on-street parking, which is something we wanted to look at last time. Looks like we can get about 16 angled stalls out there on the street. What that does is it kind of brings everything up closer to the road from the park in this scenario. What I want to do is kind of define this in parts. If you go to the second sheet, this one here, we did two different kind of layouts. One with food trucks. The food trucks were there, food vendors, and vendor tents are ghosted in on the sidewalk area. You can just barely see them right in there. And then the other scenario would be everyday use with cars parking. That sidewalk in there is about 20 feet wide. We want to make it wide enough to have tents on one side of the walk, food trucks on the other, or tents on the other, you know, and get that kind of concourse feel down through there. So that's kind of that entry area or the market space, if you will. And then as you enter in on access is the restroom / pump house building. Character which is somewhat, you know, taking off from City Hall since it's on access. It's also the biggest structure you're going to have over there, so it's a nice organizing piece, if you will. I wanted to separate the fountain and the playground, obviously for safety issues, but also create entry. So what we have is a couple of the 3-foot walls that actually kind of define those two spaces from the sidewalk and the parking areas for both the fountain and the playground. Now I've shown playground over here. We may choose not to do that now. We may choose to do it later. I went ahead and put a budget number in there for it now just so you know where it stands. Again, and I really broke down that estimate so you kind of see where that money's going, and we can make decisions based on some of that too. Anyway, so you get good flow back and forth between the playground. Oh, and I should say the playground, that's just a placeholder. That's not the actual equipment that we're going to be using. So the fountain itself, if you keep going down through, has a mixture of hop jets plus above deck features. And there is actually a channel in there, although we didn't model it. It's kind of an S-shaped piece. We'll model it for the final, but we didn't for this one. We have those trellis shade structures. And we went ahead and included some porch swings under those. We've got a walk around the whole area along the outside, which ties into the overall oval walkway. Because a lot of people are going to walk through there. They're going to miss that and kind of go around. There is a brick area in this for commemorative bricks if we so choose. And of course, then leading out is the event lawn beyond there, which we didn't model that because it's pretty straightforward. I'll go ahead and hit the second one, and then we can kind of compare and contrast a little bit. So the second one does show all off-street parking, 43 stalls as opposed to 16. I priced this one as asphalt on this one, the other one being concrete because that's really the only pragmatic way of building the other one. And we'll get into the price later. Again, here we kind of have an entry feature moving in. There's walls there. The brick again shows up. Again, all of these have the same pieces and parts. It's just kind of the arrangement. Restroom is in the centerpiece. Second sheet shows kind of how market and vendor space may be used in that parking lot versus a typical day. Again, short walls defining some of these spaces. We did use a little bit of fencing to help define those and kind of keep the kids corralled, if you will. Fountain on the left, playground on the right. There's no magic to that. It can be either or, to be honest with you. And again, the playground may or may not happen at this stage. Trellises, there's a little less square footage of trellis on this, and that's just kind of a function of the arrangement on this. Again, circular walk around the outside for the folks just using the walkway, or the oval walkway. These can be mixed and matched if you really so choose. If you really like how number 2 works, but you like the parking on the other, they can be put together. There's nothing wrong with that. That was part of the idea. I wanted to make sure that these, one had a lot more parking than the other, and very interchangeable as well. Again, I priced everything into this. That's the last sheet. There's some contingency in this as well. I was actually really surprised. I thought that Concept 2 was going to be quite a bit more than Concept 1. In all actuality, it's looking like it's about $110,000 more, so it's not a whole lot.
And 33 more parking spots.
Correct. Now, I did price asphalt parking on that lot, not concrete. If you wanted to go concrete, you're going to pretty well double that. So really, instead of about 20, I say double it, it'll double up on the paving. So 24, 45, so that'll go up to 90. It's about $45,000 more if you want to go to concrete for the extra 43 stalls. Now, my personal feeling is I like the second option regardless of the parking lot. That's kind of here, I like having the extra stalls out there. I don't think you'll ever regret necessarily building them, but there is a cost associated with it. But I like what the rest of the design does a little bit better in the second concept. I think it's a better sense of entry. I think the spaces are stronger and well defined. You can see into it as you enter through the fencing, which I think is important to see in through there. Thoughts, questions, criticisms?
I like how you broke down. I like how you broke down the length of the walking path as 0.2 miles. So 5 laps is a mile, and that's great for walkers to get a sense of how far they're walking. I think that's fantastic.
I did readjust it. I did show the overall plan. Just again, not that this is probably how this is all going to develop, but I want to make sure everybody understood how these both would fit potentially into that, and how the drives could still be worked out. That's why actually one of the event ones just a hair skewed to that and the overall shape.
I want to say I really appreciate you going back to the drawing board after our last meeting and giving us a couple of really good ideas to look at. This is what we needed so that we can make our decisions, if or when and what in the future with this. So, I mean, this is exactly what we needed so we could have the information, so we could have our conversations and discussions and see what if anything we do with all this. So I thank you for that. But at this point, I think, thinking back to all the concerns that were aired at the last workshop, this is a really good way to cut down some of the costs. I think it's still aesthetically extremely pleasing. I like these. Not that I dislike the other ones, but I like.
These are more developed, they're more refined than where we were before. They're pretty clean, pretty simple, easy. Simple forms, pretty easy to build. Incorporated what we talked about and what we heard. So, and again, go back to the estimate, you can kind of start seeing, I highlighted in blue kind of the thoughts on what I had, at least some thoughts where you may want to start looking for naming rights and donations. Those are pretty easy ones.
Right.
To really start eyeballing. Also possibly grants. Nobody really likes to give money for parking lots, so that's always a tough one. Sidewalks.
Well, and this is what I like. It's kind of a breakdown, so we can possibly start looking at grants. I mean, especially considering the splash pad is going to be ADA compliant. I mean, there's a lot of grants out there for that kind of thing, and that can help build stuff. I mean, that can really offset some costs.
When I say I tried to break it down into pieces and parts, like the playground. If you were to do the playground, you're running around $200,000 as far as I know. Now I budgeted, about $100,000 for the equipment. Kind of assumed another $25,000 for install. I've got so much money in for safety servicing, so that's a little bit of a stab in the dark. I know that'll get us there. It's just a matter of finding the equipment that we really want for that budget number. But if we chose not to do that piece, what we would probably do is break that out, leave it alone, grass it, and be done with it for today, and then come back later.
Just a question on the parking. You show some parking along the left side of the development. Does that go on the left side? Does that go all the way down to the street, or does it stop someplace here in your plan?
Well, in this plan, in number 2, I would be building the drive approach and just enough of this to get into the parking lot, and I would stop it right here.
Oh, okay. So where the red line is.
Yeah, when any other development occurred, it would take off at that point and then move into the development. While number 1, concept 1 doesn't have any of that. It's because it's all on street.
It's all the red line.
Correct.
Okay.
So those drives would have to be put in later, associated with the development.
Cool. Good.
That's the way we used to park it.
And how many acres total is the event lawn?
Yeah, let's see. I've got that. One is.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's right down here.
Yeah.
1.5, 1.68.
Yeah, and I assumed about 20 square feet per person. That's pretty generous, quite frankly. 10 is about normal. So I went to 20, figuring people would probably bring out blankets and whatnot. So you realistically could put more in if you wanted to. But.
Where did you have number of people?
Oh, it's right here on this sheet. For the event lawn
The
area.
concert capacity.
Yeah.
Oh, concert. Okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
Normally I like about 10, like in Andover we figured right around 10 for theirs, but this one again I went up to 20 just because it's a little less formal.
I thought in your master plan, the event lawn was like 6 acres.
The overall park area was around that.
Well, I was just thinking, the nice thing is this gives us room to grow too, as far as with the future development with the retention pond, and there's a lot of green space over there that, that can be used at that point too. And 10 years down the road, whatever it is.
And this is a little dated, but it's probably close, Ty, 6.75 total park area is where we were.
Whole thing, gotcha.
Yeah, and we're probably maybe a little less than that with these layouts here. I can give you that number though. And again, that's guesswork depending upon how the development occurs kind of around you as well.
The event lawn, looking at this, that's the grading, that's some of the least cost on here. So even if we wanted to expand that out initially, kind of like what Jeff was saying, is
Well, I was saying later.
As long as we're not-
I like the concept here.
Right.
Because, I mean, 3,400 people is
Right.
going to take care of us for at least a good 5 years. I would
But what I'm
think.
saying, I mean, this is still going to be field out here for us when
Right.
we're looking
I
at
understand.
like the Easter egg hunt, the
Right.
fall festival.
You know,
that
if you
type of
wanted
stuff, so,
to
which works
kind of
perfectly.
extend that, what I probably would do is do just some real fine grading for so many feet beyond the walkway. Call it 25, 30 foot. Maybe do some seeding in that area and get some buffalo or something like that. And get that kind of buffer between that and kind of what's out there today.
Gotcha. Perfect.
I really use hot tires for the road grader too.
Yeah, I saw that.
The lighting I only kept in the upper section of this. I didn't run lighting around that entire oval walk. If that's something we want to do, certainly something we can look at. But obviously, it's added cost, about $3,500 a pole plus some conduit. So keep that in mind. 75 foot, give or take, probably all right spacing. Perfect.
Well, I would just like to say, just in terms of responding to all the inputs in our discussion last time, this is a huge shift in that direction. So I really appreciate your responding to all the inputs that we had, and I like just in terms of the design, the simple geometry, the clean lines. It's a lot more kind of tidy, and I don't know. It's a big improvement from just in terms of aesthetic and thinking about the space and everything. So I really appreciate your effort to incorporate those things. It really is. It seems a lot different. I mean,
Yeah.
in a good way, in a really good way, I would say.
I think if you build this, even if if you don't really expand the park later on or whatever, I think it still functions really well.
Right.
I don't think it'll ever feel not done, if you will. Obviously, the playground, if it doesn't go in today, it's still going to be a green, small, maintained green space for play. You can come in later on that. But I don't think it'll feel unfinished.
Yeah, always something to look forward to. Well, thank you so much. Does anybody have any other questions for Jeff on the design at all?
And there's nothing on the northeast,
Well, there is in the master plan, but again, that's
but not in this.
Yeah.
that's down the road.
I thought
We got to
that's
see
what
if we
I've
can do
seen.
this first.
Yeah, I think, it depends on what you want to do next. If you want to consolidate this into a single plan, that would be great, and then start looking grant opportunities and funding opportunities with that one plan. You can quite frankly do it with
I guess I have
either. If
I have a
it doesn't
question.
matter.
Something we didn't talk a whole lot about, but in terms of pricing to have conduit and electrical hookups basically ready to go, kind of in the middle of the event lawn on the side, like in this area. Do you have a spitball on what that would cost to have that installed as part of the event lawn construction? So if there were to be a concert or something, electrical hookups would just be right there.
A little bit of it depends on how much power we're going to run. My knee jerk is going to say, I'm going to say 200 amps. And what I would want to do is basically put, I think, a panel out there that you would plug a portable into. That's what we've done in the past. Let me look at some numbers on that. Those portables are expensive pieces of equipment. Basically, it's a panel, a portable panel, and you basically plug that sucker into a three-phase 200 amp panel that we run out there.
So the
And
city
that
would
gives
have
you-
that, and then it would be put out for
we
that
have done
event?
that twice for the city of Wichita.
Okay.
And the alternative is to at least run that power out there, and then if you lease or rent a stage, a lot of times they can plug direct into that. I can get you pretty good numbers on both of that. I just don't have them right now.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at my
Sure,
numbers.
I
and
appreciate
all.
that, yeah. I was
It's
just
not
curious.
inexpensive. You know, you're probably talking, I'm gonna go ahead and just say 10, 12,000 bucks probably to get something like that done. With the panel, with the portable. But again, you can make that decision if you want to actually purchase that piece of equipment or not.
So with the portable, you could do, I mean, anything from just a basic set of speakers and a mic to kind of a full-blown concert type. I mean,
Yes,
I'm not talking
you
about
can run a
bringing,
concert off of it.
Rolling Stones in here with all their equipment, but
You would be able to run
At the house.
pretty much any concert that you guys generally would do off of that. Like I said, we did that up at Nomar. Actually, there we didn't buy them a panel, but we did have the power for it. And then just on the river, we did the panel plus the portable there. And those were 200 amp panels. That'll get you pretty much anything you're going to really need.
Okay.
Andover, we did 400, but that was a different scale. And they were power hungry, I think.
And we're talking low scale, local, more
Yeah.
like movies on the lawn
Honestly,
type
200,
electricity.
that power is
I was thinking small local
give you more
bands
than you'll ever.
that would play. I mean, you know, I'm not having a big
Yeah.
rig
What you put in the
set
house,
up.
right?
Yeah.
You just wouldn't use more than that.
Yeah.
I just don't believe. But I can get you decent numbers on that.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much. I'll let you get on with your evening unless anybody else has any other questions for you. And council will keep this and we'll look at this down the road.
Well, what do you want me to do next? I've already got some information I can give to you on grants and whatnot that you can start looking at. But beyond that, what else would you like me to do? Or would you like me to stand steady?
I'm not hearing any.
Take a vacation.
I mean, obviously, the more information that you have by doing this before on grants and everything that can help us out, the better it is, or even ideas of where we can go to do those things. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'll start
You know,
transmitting
obviously,
those.
we don't want to spend a penny in the taxpayer's dollar more than we have to, but you know, anything that we can do to offset any of these costs is a fantastic thing. I mean,
Do you feel comfortable narrowing it down to a concept? And then that way we could have something final?
Since we aren't going to construction documents today, we don't absolutely have to decide one or the other if you don't feel comfortable doing that right now.
Okay.
Once we get into CDs, you'll obviously need to make a decision, but realistically, it's up to you.
Okay.
And most grant folks, they don't care. You submit one of them, whichever one you want to submit. They won't care.
For curiosity's sake, I would just be kind of interested to see if you had to choose today, if you like one or two.
I'd go with two because of the additional parking.
Me too.
Only reason.
Ty, do you have thoughts on that? We may have a consensus right now.
Yeah, I do. I think that's, like you were saying, for the few thousand extra, 50,000 extra for all that parking. I think would be big.
Yeah, I really like the parking on number 2. I do like the larger event lawn on number 1, but I think the parking is
Yeah.
probably more necessary there.
And I think where that gets into is because that first phase kind of bites into it a little bit more, and that second phase is the way that is.
Well, and I'm absolutely with Justin and Jim there. I mean, number 2 for that cost to get more parking spots, but exactly like what Justin was saying too with the event lawn. I mean, that's kind of the big thing that. So, but you ease some of my concerns there by saying do a little bit of grading outside of that. And remember, all this is still it remains a field.
Yeah.
So it's not that we can't go ahead and have some of these events out there right now. So, but I'm on the record for number 2.
yeah, I think number 2. I think it's nice keeping the parking off the street, just because it kind of continues the aesthetics of the street that it is now. And that's, I mean,
You had a question last time about Hawks Crossing, 60,000.
okay. I mean, I think that's something that in the future I think might be worth looking at too. I mean, as you know, as the parking, I mean, kind of just spitballing here, but like, I love this spot right here for future, like a community building, that people can rent for weddings and parties. And I mean, if you look at the one out in Andover, it is rented every single weekend with weddings or whatever it is. And then, you know, obviously during major events, we'd gain that parking from that structure as well. So I think that's a really cool deal. I mean, I think the city's lacking in event space.
Betty, do you have a thought, one or two?
I would probably go with 2, not just because everybody else did, but the parking and I kind of like the layout better.
Jeff, do you have one or two?
Yeah, I would lean towards 2. It's the parking.
I feel like an eye doctor better. 1, better 2, better.
Everybody agreed though.
I think you got your consensus for 2. So, yeah, well, like I said,
I do like the wrought iron. I think that, because that's kind of what we've got here in Central Park.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to build a lot more wall. I wanted to include a little bit of that fencing, again, tie back.
Yeah.
Plus, I wanted to see it. I wanted to have that really visual because I want to see the kids playing, you know, here now. So.
Yeah.
well, this is great to have. You know, this is vision that we've had to use that space for something. Obviously, we're a ways away from making any decisions on or for that, but I appreciate having this, and we'll certainly keep this. It's not going to be on the back burner, but we'll keep moving forward with it.
All I'll do is I'll update the estimate, and what I'll do is I'll actually change the lighting to lighting and power,
Okay.
and then I will include power for stage.
Okay, that would be.
Yeah,
As a line
no,
item.
I think that'd be. I mean, I
think we would all like
more
that,
sense
right?
now. I think it would make more sense now than later.
Might as well get it in there now.
Yeah. And then, if you could, I would suggest maybe having seeing what the additional cost would be for all the lighting around
Okay.
in a good space. Because if we're already running power there, power's already running. But like I'd love to see events run till darkness type deal. And obviously, somebody walking around the track and all of a sudden it gets dark on them. We don't want them to be in the dark. So.
Yep.
And we could even look at solar powered lights too. There's lots of stuff out there to look at.
I do have another question. In regards to the restroom building, it looks like that's a pretty large building. What is?
It's about 600 square feet.
So how many restrooms are in there, and what are
It
they?
is 2 male, 2 female, 1 family. And then the back, 100 and basically 75 square feet of that is actually the pump house or pump room for pump equipment.
When you say 2 male, is that like 2?
1 urinal, 1 toilet.
Okay.
And I can get you a layout of that too. It is based on a layout we've done. So I can certainly send that your way just so you have it and just see it.
I think so.
And once something like that is built, how much more are we talking if we were to double and go 2 urinals, 2 toilets, or 3 urinals, 2 toilets? Are we really adding quite a bit more?
I will tell you, I am not convinced of the cost effectiveness of doing that. I think providing, this is I'll give you this number just so you have it. And this is a public restroom company gave me this, so I won't, if you don't think it's right, blame them. They figure 30 seconds per man per stall, and 1 minute, 60 seconds for one. So if you figure that up with 2 apiece, so you got 2 men, 1 woman, so that's 3 per minute. So 120 people per hour, plus 1, and I don't know if that's a men or women in that one. So you're talking close to 180 people per hour through there for 5 holes, if you will. I don't think you'd ever need any more than that, quite frankly, for what you're building, not the vents. Okay.
Well,
And I don't think it's worth building more restroom for events when you
Okay.
can rent, honestly, porta potties.
Okay.
Just because the amount of money restrooms take to build is obscene.
And that's what I want to know because
It's
I have
ridiculous.
I have no idea.
It's
And I'm
just
thinking,
ridiculous.
Plumbing's there. Oh heck, just drill another hole, but it's not that easy.
It's really, you think it's gold plated. I mean, it's amazing how much restrooms cost.
So if you, and I'm not saying advocating this so much, but I do know that politically there may be some drive towards this. not necessarily in this area, but what if they were all unisex restrooms?
You know, we can do that. We'll have to redo the arrangement. You know, we kind of talked about that in the survey a little bit, and frankly, the responses I got were, I think, more on the architecture side of things than really understanding that of unisex. It's certainly something we can do. We just have to look at the arrangement.
Okay.
The issue, and I don't think this is going to be a problem for you out here, is obviously somebody can go in and lock the door. Well, in some places,
This isn't Berkeley.
you don't want someone going down there and basically living in it, overnight.
Right. No, you don't want that.
You know, so I don't think that's going to be the issue out here. So I think you'd be safe doing this.
Oh,
If
okay,
you so
so you,
chose.
yeah, so
But if this was,
what you're suggesting is that you have to have a lockable door on unisex, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I get that.
I'd rather have separate.
Yeah,
no, I like unisex. I like the idea of them. But you're going to lock them. Obviously, you're going to lock them all down anyway at night. But that's the only issue that I maybe see with it. I mean, the arrangement's a little goofy for the layout of the building, but that's something we can work out.
not necessarily my agenda, I just thought, we're talking about that issue, we can talk about it.
I appreciate you bringing that up. All right.
The lock doesn't work and somebody else walks in on you.
Right.
Well, on that note, we'll let you go, Jeff. I appreciate you being here.
Well, Ty, on your next agenda, do you need me to stay for that?
Yeah, I thought if you had time, you could stay.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay for all this. Yeah, we'll go ahead and jump in with, said that we wanted to focus a lot of our workshop this evening on marketing. It's something we began talking about a few months ago. It's something I've been kind of pushing. Ty's pushing it too. We all have the same goal here, and that's to promote ourselves to sell land. So I want to talk quite a bit about marketing, and we'll start out, we've got it broken down tonight. Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing for the Sunflower Commerce Park, what we're doing for the Tierra Verde property. I think that's something that Justin brought up. We want to talk about how we're doing realty with real estate, with commercial, as well as individual homes, and then talk about some of the promotion ideas that we're doing. So, and then we'll get on with the very preliminary conversation of our budget. But let's go ahead and get started with marketing, and let's talk about the Sunflower Commerce Park and what we're doing. This is pretty exciting.
Yeah, so basically what I did is when we had Andrew Nave here from the Greater Wichita Partnership talking about suggestions he had and stuff, and we were all talking about the different pieces. And so what I did was I took my notes from that and then just kind of included them in our agenda for tonight to give you an update on what I've been doing on all those different pieces. So one of the pieces was the Sunflower Commerce Park, and Andrew had mentioned that they get interest from companies to come to the Wichita Metro, but they don't have time and don't want to build a building. They'd rather just find one that they can lease, and typically they're 50 to 100,000 square foot or more. They have to have at least 28 foot high ceilings, 30 foot, and just a lot of the buildings, most of the older buildings we have don't meet either one of those, and so they end up leaving. And so Marla and I had been talking about, and that was the other thing is, and that's where we'll also lead into the spec building policy, but the other piece was that Andrew said is to take away all the red tape and the no's that slow up processes. And so the other thought was, okay, so we get somebody, we don't have a building that they want, we don't have a spec building, Wichita doesn't have one. Could we take a virtual building, one that's already been maybe designed and even constructed somewhere else, and set it on a lot and say, okay, and this is what this actually is here, and met with Jeff to talk about the idea, because obviously they are architects and do construction and things like that, and then they were instrumental with our Sunflower Commerce Park. So he actually kind of went through the process with us on how you would do that. And so he came up with some concepts that they've already constructed in other markets.
Yeah, those actually, the ones we did use weren't built. It's on a project that the developer stopped because of the city was being a pain.
Okay, all right. So
You can come to this area?
He is from here, so you're welcome to go call him up.
So basically, so they've designed this and have documents with, and this was, how many, just depends on the size.
52 or 54,
You
yeah,
get
it
to
depends.
54,000 square feet.
Yeah, and they're based on a 50-foot module.
Yep, and so you could, someone could do the whole building, they could, build half of it and lease it out, they could expand it. The thing is that, we have something to show them that we've kind of already went through internally with Keith and the building, planning and zoning and things like that to say, okay, this would fit the design standards of Sunflower Commerce Park. We could probably issue a building permit if we saw the plans within a month or 2 months or something. And Jeff could say, well, this has already been designed. In a month, I can get changes to the offices you need, garage doors, things like that. And then we would be ready to have this out for bid in a couple months, 3 months. And then construction maybe 6 months. So we could have, a building if someone really needed it very quickly. And so that's what we've come up with, and we're working with Jeff to kind of finalize what it is that we want it to look like and the size. And they've been very good to work with. Law Kingdom has with us, and so we're going to put this together, and then we're going to be using that when Marlin or Greater Wichita Partnership or whatever has someone that they're looking for a building, they don't have a building, and then we can say, what size of lot do you want? And what size of building do you need? And here's the building, here's the different lot sizes. You pick which lot you want it on. You pick how big you want it. Is it 50? Is it 100,000 square foot, whatever. Go to Jeff, he'll finish the design work and get it out to bid.
Yeah, and a lot of it, and you know this just from how I laid this out, because I didn't know. I mean, this is just guesswork, right? We've got a spur track, and of course I got the spur in the wrong place because I didn't have that plan from Trans
I figured out
Systems.
where that was.
Yeah, it's actually, so I need to rework the plan, but just to jive with that. But is this an onload, offload type of facility with the spur? Is it rail car to truck? Is it rail car to warehouse? Is it warehouse to what that is? I don't know, and that's why I've shown a lot of basically truck parking, but those could also be container slots.
Yep.
Again, this is just guesswork because we don't have a program or anything like that.
Right.
But I think building-wise, you're looking at those two configurations of those buildings, just based on that particular lot and how it's arranged, and the space you need to get trucks in the back.
Is that an easy one to connect those two buildings so that somebody said, hey, I need 100,000?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't think it'd be a problem, but I just thought that.
You can run this 50-foot,
Right.
basically, as long as you've got a road around it for fire, it doesn't matter. You can go on forever, essentially.
Because that was what we were hearing, the input was that they need 100,000 square foot buildings. So,
Yep. So, some of these, this is actually has the rail siding right here, and so what we would do is we'd kind of come up with something with the Union Pacific about how a spur would come off here to feed this, and then what kind of building we would like. And so and then the other one would be like this one, where the trucks, and we could put it on a 5-acre or a 3-acre lot or something like that. So, anyway, this is the first plan. I actually ran this by Union Pacific when we met with them last week, and so we're going to be working with Jeff to kind of finalize the two designs and things. But this is one of those marketing tools that we're hoping that puts us ahead of everybody else, in that we've already got the building that's designed. It's very easy to make changes. We've got the lots for you. We've got UP approval, and we've got City of Bel Air approval, so we can get this done in no time.
So how much time do you think we'll shave off a prospective project like that by implementing a strategy like this?
Well, what's your thought, Jeff? If someone comes to you and says, I want to build a building, and versus you showing them one of these and say, we can build one of these for you.
I think you'd start getting rid of some of the upfront work that you do. Honestly, I'm guessing maybe 4 weeks overall. They're simple buildings. There's really not a lot to them. Now, I think where it helps is that if you go through your process and have kind of a preliminary permit or something like that, that's where you're saving some time. The other part of this is if you can get some kind of idea from a contractor on price, and if he holds it for 6, 12 months or whatever, for that building, there's going to be fluff in there, obviously. It's not going to be exact. I think that's going to gain you some. If you have some arrangement where it's design build, agreement, that's going to save you a lot of time. Because now you're not going to go through full design, full bidding process, and you can really hit the ground running. Basically, the contractor already knows basically what that building is. I mean, that's realistically, if your main goal is speed, design build is the way to go. It's going to get you there faster. It's going to cost you a little bit more for them or whomever, but it's going to get you there faster because they're going to see this and okay, well, they're going to start doing some sub pricing while we finish foundations. We're going to hand foundation drawings to them. They're going to go do foundations, while the rest of the structure is being designed, and while we're finishing up with office spaces and stuff like that, they're out building. So that's where you start really expediting.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it would shave off a month of us from Jeff coming to us with something we've never seen before and say, well, what do you think of this? So if we've already kind of given preliminary approval to this design, so probably talking 2 months just on the construction. Now, on this lot, and we'll talk about a little bit later with Union Pacific, but what we're doing with them will shave off easily 3 months of just UP time. So if it's a siding and we're using UP with what we're going to do, you're looking probably 6 months easy what we'd shave off by doing this.
Yeah, if you can get that from the railroad, God bless you. Nothing moves quick through the railroad.
Right.
Yep.
Well, let me give you a little example of what design build does, because we really did this up in Hutchinson. From breaking ground to going operational with 2 surgery suites, we did it in 6 months. We broke ground in May and operational in November with all the state approvals. So it really does cut time out.
Yeah, if it's speed you're looking for, that's the way to go. That's why they're building the ballpark. Well, that's not. Yeah, it's design build. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Probably not the right project to actually do it.
A little too big
That's
for
just my
us.
opinion.
A little too big for us.
But this is a really good design build project. Maybe a straightforward building.
Well, I think we've got to find those
Well-
things that can give us an advantage over the other cities that people are looking
And
at.
another, just throw out there idea is if you could build a timeline and say, and we can commit to our portion of that timeline.
I like that.
Like a
I
package you
think,
could hand to
yeah,
a prospective
that would,
person.
that would help them a lot, because I know from the other side of that deal, it's a little hard to conceptualize. Well, how's that going to work out?
We can
Some
even
of those nuts and
customize
bolts
it.
that I'm missing.
Oh, today you go ahead and
Yeah, that's true.
I like that.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Right.
So would these virtual spec buildings go through like the planning commission ahead of time and be pre-approved that far along into the process, or does this just get the pre-approval through kind of the staff level?
It would be, yeah, so really, as long as it meets the zoning, which is industrial, it doesn't have to go through planning and zoning.
Okay.
So it's just the staff time of
All right.
reviewing that they're meeting our codes. And again, that's what we would do,
That
is
makes
when we
sense.
come up with and we'd say, well, where's the water coming in? What kind of parking spaces, all that kind of stuff. So, yep. Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So the next piece is a speculative industrial building. Now, this is something that, again, we talked about. Andrew had mentioned that going back to, there are people that don't even have time for a design build and are looking for a place that they can go into and lease immediately, and if they don't have it, they're moving somewhere else. So there are some situations where developers will build a spec building. And so what the city of Wichita did was created a policy where they automatically give tax abatements to those. And the reason that it's kind of unique is because typically when we do an IRB, we do a cost-benefit analysis and looks at the number of square foot, the value they're going to put in there, which that's easy to do. It's the employees, the number of employees. So obviously the more employees you have, the better score you're going to get. Well, if you're building a spec building, you don't know who's going to be there, how many employees they're going to have or anything. So it's kind of hard then to issue an IRB using that cost-benefit analysis. We don't know what kind of employees. So what I did was I basically took what Wichita had developed and then met with Marlin to talk about, well, you know, what size do we want to allow this to? Like Jim said, a lot of them, they want 100,000 square foot. The question is, you know, do you want to limit it to 100,000 square foot? Marlin said that he would like it to be at least 50,000. So they don't have to build 100,000 square foot. They can build something a little bit smaller. But if they want to build a 75 or 100, they certainly can. It's completely up to them. And then what they would get is, first 5 years, they'd get a 100% tax abatement. And then, of course, all IRBs are 10 years. The minimum ceiling height's 28 foot. So again, it's got to be the high ceilings because those are the issues that we're having with the businesses is they need at least 50 to 100,000 square foot and at least 28 foot heights. So again, we're trying to fit the need. We're not saying that anybody can do a spec building and just build it however you want and then we'll give you tax payments. It's that need that we don't have, or that serving that need that's out there that's not being served. And then it could be, again, you'd qualify for a minimum of 5-year, 100%, and then after that, it would be kind of like what we do in our LOIs would be the 5-year, 100%. And we could do a walk down after that, or you could do 10-year, 100%, or whatever. And obviously, you probably want to look at each individual building. So someone comes in and says, you know, I'm going to build 100,000 with a 30-foot ceiling. You may say, well, for that, we'd give you a 10-year, 100%. But if you want to build a 50,000 with 28 height ceilings, we'll do a 5-year, 100%, and then maybe a 40, 20, 10, or 60, 40, something like that. So you'd kind of look at those individually. But I've already got someone that might be interested if this policy moves forward in the industrial park. So basically, I'm looking for your input and thoughts, and then if you want to move forward, then we'll put it on a future agenda.
I think it's a great idea. I just wish we would have had the foresight to do this a year or two ago, because I understand there are already 4 buildings in Wichita that under the Wichita policy that are in some phase of construction and completion. I know one of them's right over here in the little industrial park off of Webb Road there. So, and it's available right now.
It'll be available here now.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this.
Okay.
I like how it's worded. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
The only question that I had was more on the application side. I wanted to just understand kind of what the purpose is for the application and the application review process, and see if you could talk a little bit about that.
So basically, again, it's to look at who the developer is, and you know what they've done in the past. We want to make sure that what they're building blends in with the environment. In other words, what the other, they can't just go in and put in just a metal building with, no brick or something that would match the other businesses out in the Sunflower Commerce Park. Because if you drive through there, they all have nice entrances and stuff. Now, they're all typically metal buildings, but they have special entrances and things. And what's interesting is you hear them talk about it, and they all are concerned that the next building coming in has met some of those criteria too. because they want to keep the value of their property up. They
It's
don't
kind of like a
want-
homeowner association
Yes.
only for,
Right.
Yep. And so that's, that's the reason we just ask those questions. We want to make sure that, how many square foot, the height, and then, to make sure that they're able to follow through on what it is that they're requesting this tax exemption for. And then of course, then we do the cost benefit analysis, which is required. And also then we look at, when they think that they're going to have it full, if they think they'll lease it out to one person or several people, because obviously there's more of a market for smaller buildings, and so the market narrows as you get to larger buildings. That's why there's not a lot of larger buildings. So, to know that someone's going to build a 100,000 square foot building, but their intent is the next 6 months is to divide it up into 450s.
Right.
Well, that kind of, we kind of lost our 100,000 square foot building because now they're going to make smaller ones. So that's why we're going to ask them these special questions about, to make sure that they, try to meet our requirements.
And who will be responsible for reviewing the applications?
I will.
Okay.
And then, like I said, then we'll do the cost benefit analysis, and then based on those things, look at their financial stuff, then I'll bring a recommendation to you in a letter of intent of, how we're going to handle the tax abatements for that 10-year period.
And so what's the thought behind the $2,500 non-refundable application fee?
That way we know that they're serious. Number one, the cost benefit analysis usually runs us $1,000.
Okay.
So we get that back. And then we also know that if they're going to spend that money, they're probably for sure going to build it.
Like earnest money when you're buying a house.
I was mostly curious about the non-refundable component of that. It made sense to, ask somebody to, provide a fee to process it, but
Yep.
their application's approved,
And I think Wichita's was $5,000 if I remember right, because I wanted ours to be less.
Good.
Yeah, Ty, this sounds really good. It sounds like there's a lot of risk mitigation built into the concept. But what ultimately is the risk as far as the city is concerned on?
So the city doesn't have any risk, and that's one of the benefits of doing something like that. What we're doing is encouraging the private side to do something. Now, El Dorado went out and built their own spec building, and that was a fiasco, from what I understand. They couldn't get it leased, and all that, and that's tough, spending taxpayer money to build something, especially if it doesn't work out. So what we can do then is give tax abatements. So what are our benefits? Our benefits is we sell a lot, or if it's in, let's say, the Bel Air Industrial Park, which is 45th and Webb, we don't own that, but there's some lots there. There are 2-3 acres that you could do on. So we get a 75,000, 100,000 square foot building on it. Then we know that it's going to be a minimum of 5 years. Tax abatement, but then after that, then it'll start coming on the tax rolls, and that makes a big benefit to the city so that we have this building out there. The only risk would be that if they went bankrupt or something, but typically then a bank takes it over and they pay the taxes on it. So worst case is we'd lose some taxes if something very bad went wrong, but
we're not making taxes on it now.
Worst case is it sits open for the next 30 years.
Yep.
Or 50
So,
years or whatever.
yeah, we're just trying to encourage growth that we don't have to.
No, I'm just saying, that's
Take it
worse.
on.
Yeah, that's what it is, yeah.
That's
So,
worse than having 5.
so really, I think
tax
it's, other than losing some taxes up front, it's a positive. And we've seen that. Ted and I have talked about how, our growth rate in our property tax has been going up 7% a year, which typically people are lucky to have 3%. Well, there's two reasons. One is all the development we're getting, but number two is like Wickham, they came off that. They had a 10-year tax abatement. They came off, so we started bringing on some money from them for taxes. So, eventually, we will get paid back, or at least start making some revenue on some of this.
Plus, we don't own land.
Right. That's the biggest thing.
Okay, so then the next piece of what we're doing is Union Pacific. So last week I met with Union Pacific. He came down, and so what we talked about was creating a developmental plan that we can show any company that's interested in the Sunflower Commerce Park where rail could go, and the process to get even preliminary approval, like I said, can take 3 months or more, because they have so many divisions that they have to go through. They have to ask the local line people, can you serve so many more trains or so many more cars? How's the switching up here? And then you got the salespeople, can we get more cars out there? And then the engineering side of it, and then the scheduling. There's just, and I don't know a lot about railroads, but just what I've learned is there's a lot of pieces to them. And so what we did is we've hired Trans Systems, and this plan is costing us $2,500. And so you can see basically what's south of the tracks is almost, 100, almost 200 contiguous acres that can be designed or developed. So they're looking at running 2 spurs off of there. So obviously, if you had one person that wanted it all, you'd do one. If you wanted 2, you could divide it up. And then on the north side, we've got the 2 lots that are empty there, and they would run 2 off of that. So there'll have to be a siding that comes along the south side for these spurs to come off of. But so Trans Systems has kind of come up with this. We've agreed that this looks good. The Union Pacific representative that we met with, he's going to take this back and run it through all of his people to get approval, preliminary approval from everybody. Okay, if this were to develop like this, can we get approval that they could start designing something and then get it approved for construction? And he felt very comfortable that there would be no issues, because this is the best future development track they have in the state of Kansas for Union Pacific. Now, I don't know about Burlington Northern or the other rail, but Union Pacific, this is the line that they actually want more service on. And so one of the benefits is from their main yard downtown up to Greenwich. It's a 280-pound track, which means something about they can fill the cars 100%. Once you leave Greenwich, it drops down to like 160 pounds. So, and that track goes all the way up to El Dorado, and then it ends. So it's an industrial track. So they said that's a benefit for you, is because you can get full cars on your track, but El Dorado can't, because the track's not big enough. And so he said that, and the great thing was we met with Andrew Nave at Greater Wichita. Marlin was there, Trans Systems, and then the UP guy. And he kept saying to Andrew that we have a gem here on this track, because there's nothing like this. So we're getting this. We're going to run this. He's going to run this through the UP and give us preliminary approval on this site design. Now, even though we may have somebody come in and says, I need this whole 180 acres, I only need 1 spur, that's simple. You just take out a spur. It's not like anything has to be redone. Same thing up here. If we've got 2 spurs, if somebody wants to buy both these lots and put 1 in, no problem. You just take out a spur. That's it. So that won't change anything. Or if it's going to design, the key is that will this track handle something like this, and how does the curvature come off of these sidings? So then what he'll do is he'll get that approved. He said it'd be a couple, 3 months, so you can tell that's how this is preliminary approval. It's going to take 3 months to get that on a concept. So anyway, he said when he gets that, then he will work with us and Greater Wichita Partnership to create what he calls a focus site. And he said usually they'll have 1 focus site in every state, and some states don't have a focus site because they don't have anything like this. And then he will then start marketing this for us. So whenever he hears somebody saying we need a location, on a UP track in Kansas, he'll say, this is where you need to go, because we've already given preliminary approval of it. The design, the idea is for the spec building piece of it, is then for him to say, I've got somebody that wants these 2 lots, and then we say, okay, here's the building for it. And it's already designed, so, you've gotten preliminary approval on the track, you've got a building that we've preliminary approved, we can get you built in here in a year. Because, again, you have to build the spur. Now, the other thing that's important to note is the spur is the landowner's responsibility, so it's a business. We don't build that. Now, if there was a siding to go in, we would have to construct that, but the spurs that come off and basically dead end spurs at dead end, they have to build that. But they're used to that, because I asked him, I said, well, does that become an issue? He goes, no, all businesses are used to building their own spurs. And they know. He said the other benefit that you have here with this being a siding is the switch to come off of there is about $200,000. Now he said if you wanted to pull a switch off one of their main lines where they control it in Omaha, they can electronically flip switches up there. He said they're $750,000. So that's why he said this line is great. They know that. And they don't want to pay $750,000 for a switch when they can pay $200,000 for one. So anyway, so that's yeah. And the crazy thing is they won't pay for anything. The Union Pacific will not pay. They tell you what you got to do and that you have to pay for it, even though they get all the business off of it and things like that. So, but anyway, they've been that way since the 1800s, I guess. So that's kind of an update. I'll let you know when we get the final approval and get the focus site done for them, and I'll give you a copy of what it is. And then the last thing that we've been doing is our marketing intern has revamped our Sunflower Commerce website. So if you have time, go look at that. If you got any suggestions, let us know. But we tried to focus on what businesses are over there and what they do and the options that are available on lots and things like that. So. And then with Tierra Verde, so we've learned quite a lot, Jackie and I have, and Ted, about how these tax sales go. And it's pretty interesting how that whole process works, but it takes a little time to actually get the deeds from the county because you're basically taking land from people, and so they've got a process they have to go through, and then they have to make sure that people were notified and all that kind of stuff. So we did get the deeds the end of December, so we have those. The next phase is to have them sold. There's a title company that we'll be working with out of Kansas City because they specialize in these type of foreclosures, tax sale type, to give title insurance. That's the big key. Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County uses them all the time on their tax foreclosures that they do. So we're ready for we're getting that process done. I think Jackie's working with them to actually get the title insurance finished on the lots. So then the next question was, what are we going to do with it? And so Marla and I have met and talked about options. Do we want to stay with commercial development? Do we want to look at some residential? What do we want to do over there? So we've been kind of throwing out some different ideas. We do have, we've heard some interest of people that would like to have kind of like a large estate lot that you could have, 3 acres, 2 acres, and you could build a nice house and put a barn on it and stuff like that. Of course, we don't have that here in Bel Air. Large lots. The only over there at, what is it, Laurel Park? Arthur Heights, they've got some larger lots, but most of them are all small residential. So, you could possibly get 6 lots over there or something like that. So the other thing we did was we asked Jason Gish, who works a lot with residential developers, to go over and take a look at it. and we're going to meet with him. He swung by last week. And I sent him all the information, so we're going to be meeting with him in the next couple weeks to talk about what his thoughts are on, is there a true need for large lot residential? What's the commercial market doing? Because he works in commercial as well. Give us some thoughts about, should we replat it? So we're kind of looking at different options for the use of it and what we think we could get it sold as relatively quickly. He's got some ideas, but first we wanted to kind of get with Jason to see what his thoughts are and how we would divide it up and things like that. It's zoned commercial, so you could easily put housing in there. So that's kind of an update on where we're at on Tierra Verde. So you want me to go into John T. Arnold?
So take a big bite here.
So the question we had with John T. Arnold was bringing in a national company. And so I talked to Marlon and I said, okay, do we have any like a RBC Richard Ellis or whatever their name is, something like that, anything like that? And we don't have any. Now he did say that they do have an agent that is working out of his house down here, and he knows him. And I said, well, we were talking about maybe doing a co-listing. And he said, well, you can. He said, the issue with that is that then you're working with one other company. He said, I usually attend meetings up in Kansas City where I meet with those guys, not just Richard Ellis, but some of these other ones. And I've gotten calls from them on people that are looking in this area from different ones looking for a spot down here. So he said, if you go with one company, then we've got to work through that company, where if you don't, then they will all call me because I have the listing on it. So I said, okay, well, I just wanted to let me talk with council and see if they want to pursue anything more with that. But that's, I did have that conversation with him, and those were his feelings. He said you can do it. It's not like he had a concern or anything about it, because he knows he's getting a commission as well. His just concern was that he was afraid that everything would have to go through Richard Ellis instead of him.
So in the current model, sorry. Go ahead. I was just saying, in the current model, if somebody were to call him from Kansas City because they happen to know that we're down here and that he's listed them, how does that company get their incentive?
So their incentive would be on the commission. So they're going to get a commission as well as Marlon.
Okay.
So, and like he said, his concern was, so we're working with Ellis, CB Richard Ellis. Then ABC company has got someone. Then are they going to call Ellis and say, hey, I got somebody? And then Ellis is going to call Marlon and say, hey, Marlon, ABC's got somebody. So then all of a sudden,
So now we've really muddied the water.
who all's getting commissions now?
I'd rather just stick with Marlon, because he's
And-
not done us wrong yet.
That was his concern, was that now we're paying even more commissions.
Well, and we had talked about at one point increasing how much of the percentage just to get
Yes.
something going.
Yes.
So,
Yep. And I told him about that. He thought that was great.
of course you
So I
did.
think, I think more commission is fine if we can get more sales.
Yeah.
That's something going.
Yeah. Right.
I'm maybe
Test
less
timeline
concerned
check or
about
something.
Yeah.
paying more commissions with more
Yeah.
people involved, and more interested in, would that get more people calling us that want to be interested in it?
Yeah,
Well,
that's what I'm thinking too.
And what we talked about was, Marlon thought what we should do is put together a commercial realty meeting here in Bel Air. And his thought was, if council approves the spec building policy, then we could invite some of the commercial realtors up here and feed them lunch and roll out the spec building policy, roll out the new commission structure, and then show them Sunflower Commerce Park and some of the properties that we've got available.
Okay.
He thought that would be a good way to get it out to all of our local realtors that, these are the things we're implementing to make it easier for you. And by the way, there's additional commissions here in Bel Air.
See, I like that because then you get, you don't, if someone's talking to, oh, we've got this place here in Mays, got this place in Bel Air, but you're going to pay higher commission. They're going to be pushing this one here.
Yeah, that's what we need to get to do is target Bel Air, because
Yep.
they're all over the,
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I'm all over the communities here, and I see them.
Yep.
I see new buildings go up all over the place.
Yep. So that was his thought, and like I said, if you're good with the spec building policy, we'll talk about our virtual building and things like that, and we'll get something set up probably in March to bring them all here and feed them and roll out all this stuff.
Okay.
Good.
Sounds good.
Is March too soon? You think you can have?
I'm going to shoot for March.
Okay.
If something doesn't work out, we can push it, but I'm going to.
I just know if it's March, we're also workshopping the wood lawn and everything, but I mean, you're talking something separate from a workshop.
Yeah, no, it'll be during the day. It'll be a lunch, and we'll invite them up here and take them out and stuff like that. So
Perfect.
And then as far as Bannister, so they've got, I think I mentioned in my report, there's several spec buildings going in. The great thing is that the good thing is they're getting them sold. Bad thing is that they're trying to use one of those as a model home so that he can sit in. But they keep getting sold before he can use them as model homes.
That's good.
So that's tough, but that's showing that there's a market out there. And so there's, like I said, there's 2 of them going in right now in the landing. One of them's already sold. There's 4 of them going in the park, and then there's a couple that are going in Elk Creek.
And he held one as an open house on Sunday. I wasn't able to make it out,
Good,
but I
good.
wanted to. But
Yeah, that's
And-
probably the one that's sold.
None of those are on land that the city owns. Those are all.
No, so the ones in Elk Creek aren't on loans,
Okay.
but all the other ones are. Yeah, or that we sold. Sure.
So when he sells one, he's starting another house, right?
Yeah. So what we've been talking, actually, what we were talking about this last month, I mean, with the monthly, is okay, what can we do to incentivize the builders to put a spec in, but hold it for us for a few months, so that he can actually sit in it and start selling it, so that at least every time something sells, he's got something he can move to set in. Because that's what everybody wants, is they want to go through and look at something. And, they may want to buy that one, or they may want to do a custom, but he needs something to show them. And so we're working on some plans, and some of them may involve where the city holds the lot until it's, so that they don't have those costs until it sells, and then they pay us for the lot. And sometimes they like that because, again,
We're paying for it anyway.
Yeah, we're paying for it anyway, and we'll get our money's worth. And that's just one less expense they have to worry about to hold it. So he was going to go talk to some of the builders that are being successful to see if they'd be willing to do something like that. And so hopefully I'll meet with them again this month and see if we've got something set up that we can actually get some models going where they can set in, and then build some specs as well. And of course, you've got the websites on for those. I think I told you about those.
do we know anything on? I know it's not with Bannister, but those homes Ron Peake was building here.
I heard that they've got another builder going in there to start building.
Because it came to a screeching halt.
Yeah, because there's a lawsuit and all that kind of stuff.
So is that
Are you
your
talking about Fox Run?
Deer Run.
Deer Run Road?
Yeah.
Well, he passed away.
Right, that's what I'm saying. And it came to it just kind of started up and then.
Yeah. So moving into billboards, so I met with Ashby to talk about options of where they have signs and things like that. So you see, these are the places where they would recommend. Obviously, it's on 135, and there's some digital ones, and then there's a static one. And you can see the difference in prices. The static one is where you just put a message up there, and then every time you want to change it, it costs you to put a new sign up, basically. The electronic ones, it shows up once every, or 8 of them will show up in a minute. So every minute you got it's switching 8 times. The benefit with that I saw was that we could maybe visit with the developers and see if we could get them to partner with us so that they would know that every minute they're going to be up there once. And what I'm thinking is we could come up with some kind of, they help us with that, but if you lived in Bel Air, you'd be home by now. In Elk Creek, and then a little information or something, just quickly that would say Elk Creek or the landing or whatever.
We'll be up there for about 8 seconds.
Yep.
But
and
that's
then,
Just long enough to read.
That's what you need.
exactly.
That's what you need.
Yeah.
Right.
And then so
Especially
and then you
there.
change it out. So the next minute
Way to
it's
traffic.
next time it's Deer Run or whatever. So that way they're all getting their message up there along with Bel Air, and then we could share in that cost.
Which I just want to say, Jim, I really appreciate you bringing this to us. My focus, I've kind of have been looking regionally and nationally, and Jim, you brought up a great point. We need to look locally too, and so I just publicly I want to thank you. We're all coming up with ideas,
Jim, I thought
so
that
thank
was
you.
It's all part of the team.
I thought that was fantastic, especially where you kind of pinpointed. I mean, you've got people literally stopped, waiting to get through the North Spur that are going to see 4 or 5 different places they could go live in Bel Air if they just go that way.
If you're in that right lane, you can just keep on going. You gotta be careful because.
But yeah, Jim, I just like I said
Come down in front of you.
because like I said publicly, I want to say at first I was like billboards, but I'm like, wait a minute, no, this makes sense.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
thank you.
And you can see the difference. So the static one's $475 a month. Again, then you got to buy the sign, which is
You gotta buy the
$300,
wrap,
put it up
right?
there, yeah. And then the other ones are based on traffic. So the one which was north on 135 is $1,500 a month, and then he had thought maybe if we wanted to go on East Kellogg somewhere, you're looking at about $2,400. So different price ranges, and Jim had mentioned that there might be some other companies that might be a little cheaper that I could visit with too.
Advertising Images was $750 a month for that one that they have on the west side of 135. They're right at the.
And Clear Channel
south of
has
North
some,
Junction.
and
Oh, actually, Ashby's Clear Channel.
oh, is that now?
Yeah, because I had not heard about it, and I said, "Well, where?" And they
Oh, because you
"Well,
said
we're
Ashby,
Clear
I'm thinking,
Channel."
oh, well, yeah, here's another company. Really?
No,
Yeah,
I didn't know.
I think they
got
bought Clear
bought out.
Channel.
Okay, learn something new every day.
Well, I
So-
like that one on I-35, north.
135. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But those are all. All he has Ashby Street along there are static. They're not LED.
No, there were two.
There's a couple that are digital.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I did see.
So the one is
Which one
static
says
that as you're
digital?
heading north.
That's right. He has one.
Isn't that the
That's right.
business area
It's
that
actually
has it?
north of the junction. The
Yeah.
one he has.
Right.
Like that. Yeah.
So your message might not.
Well, you'll still get some, but
Right.
I think the one south of the junction would be.
Where people are sitting and waiting.
Because
That's where you can put the message on. You would be
And
home
you
by
get
now.
both sides.
Yeah.
You get both sides, the north and south face of that
Yeah,
side.
but
Just south of
I'm surprised at how much more
Just
expensive the
south
digital ones
of,
are
yeah.
than the poster
Yeah.
ones.
Well, and I think he said because you could change the message.
Okay.
Yeah.
Army days.
Well, National
You
Guard.
can change it as many times as you want.
Yeah, it's easy. It's all electronic. You just give them a bit.
Either
So
that
if everybody's okay with that, what I'll do is I'll contact a couple more, or however many more there are, see where their signs are
or I
at.
want to go on
Talk
Kellogg.
to those guys that
Where
advertise
they
the image.
reads them.
what they
They
cost.
Have racks.
And then maybe bring a proposal to, and then I'll visit with the developers and see if they're interested in being.
Yeah, I mean, what do we got? We got, well, us for Elk Creek and
Yeah.
Central Park. Whoever's taking over Deer Run. Who,
Banana
Let's say
Strip,
Heights,
Iron Gate.
Iron Gate. So,
Elk Creek,
Sunflower
patio
Park.
homes.
yeah.
Don't
So,
forget the parochial schools too, private schools that may.
yeah, maybe some schools.
I'd be so interested in that.
Resurrection and Sunrise may want to, the public schools can't,
Check
but,
in on it. Yeah, but they might chip in
yeah.
a little bit.
I don't know, if Resurrection's got the room. We're building it on now.
I know.
To the grade school?
Huh?
Yep.
The grade
That's,
school?
it's not official, but there's talk about eight more classrooms. They're already adding classes. They've been doing that for 3 years now.
Right.
One class a year. In 8 years, they'll have.
And
8
they're
new
full. We
classrooms.
still have a waiting
Right.
list.
Right.
We can be keeping north.
We're actually taking some kids from St. Thomas right now.
Okay.
Because they won't increase.
So, all right, well, appreciate that, and I guess, do we want to give consensus here to Ty to get a couple of quotes, bids specifically to bring to us that we can approve?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. All right, now we'll talk about our mission, vision, values, and slogan.
Yeah, so that was one of the things that I thought was very impressive when I went to that city tour in Boise is it didn't matter who you were talking to, Chamber of Commerce people, the university there, Boise State, city people, they all had the same message. They all said the same thing. And we've been trying to think about what can our slogan be, and we actually came up with one that we thought was pretty neat, was living on the edge. And the idea of that came from, so people are going to ask, what's living on the edge? What are you talking about? Well, we're on the edge of Wichita. We're on the edge of new design houses. If you drive around Central Park and, the new housing we've got, Sunflower Commerce Park has got some really neat buildings out there. If you've went and seen Empire Wall, that's a pretty impressive face that they've got.
Living on the edge with the rail spur.
Yep. We're first city that did recycling, things like that. And so we thought, well, that might be something that we could, again, a billboard, living on the edge, and people are asking, well, what does that mean? Well, we're going to tell you what it means.
And the other reason why I like that too is the edge. Again, going back to my regional and national thought is, we're on the edge of major interstates and section. That I think that would be. And plus, Aerosmith's already written the song, so we've got the.
Getting right.
I heard that you can play it for 30 seconds and you won't get it.
That's all we need for commercial.
30 seconds. All right.
I don't know. That's what Hannity was saying.
So anyway, that was the thought we had, and then of course we were just looking at our mission statement, things like that, and wanted to throw that out and see if you guys, the other thing that I really liked about Boise was that everything was pretty clean and simple, and, not a huge long paragraph and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of threw out some ideas and just wanted to get your thoughts if you had any suggestions or things you hated or new ideas.
I like that one.
I think it's important to have those mission statements, but I think they have to be well communicated. It's interesting because, I do audits of companies, and that's an issue we always ask people. Okay, and it's actually more quality policy what we ask for, but mission statements is oftentimes used as a quality policy, which is fine with me. I don't have a design on what it has to be. And but we actually ask people, are you familiar with it? Do you know what it says? And it's surprising the answers we don't get.
Yep. And I think that's because, you look at ours and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's
It's like, well,
That's a
who's
lot.
going to know that?
Right, that's a lot.
And if you look at, well, what's our mission? Well, we create lasting environment, we're innovative, and we're vibrant.
Yeah.
That's a little easier to remember than...
I almost think that could we incorporate something like people first? I mean, because that's really what Bel Air is about. It's about people, whether it be
families first, people first.
Yeah, whether it be business people, whether it be our residents, whether it be guests even. I think it's people first.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, my company recently adopted just three words that it could be something as simple as that. As it doesn't even have to be a slogan. It could just be the values is basically there's a live the values type of theme, and so yeah, I think that's a good direction to go. Something that's on the simple side of things. That could just be repeated quickly, or that's a good idea because it helps tie everyone all these little pieces moving together. I think that's a great idea.
There might be an opportunity here to get some community input on slogans or
Yeah.
Okay.
phrases that we might want to consider for rebranding
How
there.
about for business marketing, location, location, location?
There you go.
And I guess to that too, just thinking about that here, I wonder if that's something we might want to, as a council, have like I mean, we have our legislative platform. That's its own animal, obviously. But maybe if we wanted to do something that's kind of smaller scale, like a platform for the council, or not necessarily a mission statement, but I don't know. I was just throwing that out there. If you guys would want to do something like that for following this theme.
Yeah, I like the idea of kind of just, like I said, keeping it simple. People want to know a mission statement of a church. They want to know the mission statement of a nonprofit. I don't know that people want to know the mission of a city, because I bet if you ask 7,000 our 7,000 residents here, you might get 7,000 different answers on what the city means to them. So,
Lower my taxes.
lower my water bill.
To destroy people's vehicles with our roads.
This is how I look at it, and I say this, Kevin, from personal experience, because I think I'm one of the biggest cheerleaders for Bel Air in the town. I talked to, hey, we got our pom-poms today. So, I had a party for my work this past Saturday, and when we're talking about where we live, and there was a couple of people that lived in Sawmill Creek.
Oh.
And we're like, okay, well, great, you're a neighbor of Bel Air and everything. And like, yeah, it's okay and everything. And I'm like, okay. I said, I love Bel Air. I mean, one of the first things they talk about is how in the summer, we have our garage door open and neighbors just come over and hang out and have a drink and watch the baseball game that we have on the TV in there. I mean, that's why, that's the first thing I always talk about is the people in Bel Air are just absolutely amazing. So, I mean, that's why I kind of came up with the people first. I think that's probably our biggest commodity in this town.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll kind of keep working on this, and maybe what we can do is ask the citizens, what they value about Bel Air, to kind of help us create what our values are and find out,
Painted fire hydrants.
yeah, what are the great things that they value, and then we could put that in, because that should be part of our mission. Okay, so we're on the right track.
So see, you're thinking people first by getting their opinion.
All right. We'll talk now about the Community Development Advisory Board. I brought this up a couple of meetings ago that I met with the basically two remaining members, regular attenders. I mean, right now we don't even have enough on there to meet the minimum requirement of committee members that need to be on there for it to be an official committee. And Jackie was going to look into, do we just let the sun set on it? Do we need to officially abolish it? But I don't look at this as a sad thing. I look at this as a good thing. This committee began before I was on the city council as an economic development advisory committee, basically trying to help then Mayor Harold Smith come up with any idea possible for us to stay afloat, and then evolved into the community events. Now we're able to have the staff members. It filled the need at the time. We still need volunteers for events, but I don't think that we need this specific committee. So, Jackie,
agree,
can you?
Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just tell you, last year they only had a quorum twice.
Well, pardon me for interrupting you, but used to, I know you guys get tired here in the old days, but we just advertised for volunteers to help, well, for what we call Bel Air Days, but special events like the egg hunt and stuff like that. Now, I know that the majority of the people are getting older, but to getting the younger people involved, I think just doing away with this committee and then advertise for volunteers that want to help. They come, they have a meeting, they appoint their own chairman. None of the council attends unless they're gonna volunteer to help them. Then they divide out their chores, and I think Ty probably remembers, Bill, our days when it was so full, we were turning people away because we didn't have any place to put them.
And so basically, yeah, that, still needing volunteers takes the formality away of needing an agenda, needing an assigned meeting date, needing minutes, needing.
Well, I like the idea of the reorganization more. I mean, obviously, I think that, according to the bylaws, that we would have to actually vote to dismantle it as far as, I think, the way the bylaws are written. But I think just having it's more of an organization, a volunteer organization. And that way there's no constraints on you need to show up to this many meetings. If you want to go and help with one event, fantastic. Thank you so much. And then, I don't think we need chair people, I think we have our community development here at Bel Air run it, and we get volunteers. I'm more than happy to volunteer for darn near any of it. I'd love to go and help and just volunteer. I just enjoy it, and so.
So Jackie, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So I think my recommendation, in light of the way that you're wanting to handle volunteers and be able to kind of call them up when you need them, and how you're seeing the need for the specific community development committee kind of winding down, I think that we take the entire community development committee out of the code. Right now, it's in our code, and so it's kind of a permanent thing. We can change the code, but you can pass a motion, you can have a resolution, or you can make a code change. And initially, we made a code change, putting all these prescriptions in our code. So I would recommend we remove that committee from the code and instead put language in the code that recognizes that the governing body may from time to time put together advisory boards, committees, or volunteer groups, and can use those groups to do different things and can set prescriptions for those groups via resolution. So that way the code isn't changing all the time. Every time you want to put together a committee, dissolve a committee, you can put a separate policy together for each committee and then tear that up when you're done with that committee, or review that committee every 6 months or a year or whatever. So currently, like I said, I would say that we would strike the committee from the code, and then because it's the governing body's committee, you can choose to, at the same time, dissolve the committee, repeal the ordinance creating the committee, and then have the new language be available to you for other things you want to do. That would allow you to.
Because I know, here we are, we're in February, so next week will be another second official technical meeting date where a meeting didn't happen. It just looks bad.
So Jackie, to address Jeff's concern about the bylaws, there's a bylaws out there that have been passed and approved. Mm-hmm. Do they have to be rescinded in order to do all these other things?
No, it would be the overriding action would be, because remember the bylaws are so long as the group exists, you authorize them to make their own laws for how they operate. But once they no longer exist, then everything is kind of dissolved or goes away.
Okay.
And so the action of repealing that portion of the ordinance would repeal the purpose and the existence of the CDC.
I like your idea otherwise. I just had that question.
I think we ought to do what Jackie said.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that moves it. I think that moves it along to where we have a little more freedom to make not.
Search,
If we wanted to create a targeted, focus group to help us with the park, that would be a very specific thing that we could
Gathering spot.
go do. And this would give us more flexibility, because I was just, looking through the code section of, what that committee's original charter was, and I can tell that it's changed a lot over time from the original purposes there. So.
And then you'd be able to change it or make amendments from the bench without having to do anything, having an ordinance passed.
It doesn't need to be this hard.
Right,
You know,
right,
you know.
right.
Why did you come up with this 5 years ago?
I wasn't here 5 years ago.
I know.
Yeah, so, yeah.
So you'll see this,
I'll give you the background.
off of it.
I know. She's been doing
Yeah.
that. Is this your
I think that's a great idea.
third year now, right?
This will be my third year, starting in May, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, so
What do
I
you mean, maybe?
don't want to assume anything, but like I was saying, I would recommend, I would put together the draft code ordinance update for your next meeting. So at the next one, you'll see the shortened language.
I agree.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you. I would say, just background real quick, I mean, I'm looking at 2 council members who got elected, who got involved, first of all, on this committee, and then that's part of the reason why we don't have enough members, because they got elected. Former council member Ken Lee got his start. He joined this committee and then ran for council. I got my start there too. So this has been a really good, it's been an active committee. I think it's just run its course. So, perfect. All right, final thing here.
Yeah, so this is something, again, that Andrew suggested that we do, and this basically helps us when we market to companies to show them that there's a need in Bel Air. And so, please don't ask me a lot of questions on all these numbers and graphs and stuff. But the guy that created these will be at your work at the next council meeting. So he'll go over this in detail with you, and you can ask him the question, because he's an economist. Not
Did
me.
we have a copy of that in our packet? I don't remember
Yes,
seeing that.
it should have been, but if it's not all, it'll be in your packet.
He's got it up there.
It'll be in your
I
packet.
didn't remember seeing it.
Count.
I would definitely look at that.
But basically, what it shows is that what they did was they compared similar sized cities to Bel Air and what kind of businesses they have to serve them. And the biggest they looked at was Derby, and again, it's in the metro, but most of them are like Andover, which is close to us, Park City, Valley Center, us. And so what you go to look at is, so they're going to look at the gap and saying, okay, this size of city should have X number of accountants. How many do you have in Bel Air? So then you look on here, and then you find accountants, and it says negative 400%. So in other words, we have no accountants, and everybody else has 3 or something like that.
And for this analysis, that would be, only accountants that worked in the city limits of Bel Air proper,
Exactly.
not any buffer around the city of Bel Air.
Yeah,
Right,
They can't just
it's not they
look-
live here, it's their
Yeah,
business.
their
Yeah,
business.
so like grocery stores were negative 8,000, which means we have no grocery stores. Now, again, that doesn't take into fact that right across 37th Street, there's a difference.
It's a major, 24 buildings.
So here's accounts was negative 252%. So maybe the most local accounting firm is down at 29th Street. And so they might consider actually being in Bel Air because there isn't one right on 37th Street. So anyway, that's what we can use these, and we're starting to, our marketing intern and I met with him last week to talk about, okay, what's the key pieces we need to pull out of here that we need to market. And so he's got that, and we're working on getting our marketing materials to different groups so that if some of you say, hey, so-and-so is looking for a new place, then we can say, oh, that restaurant? Okay, well then, here, let us get some information, show them that gap analysis. The other piece of it has population, so it talks about population or median income. A lot of them are interested in that. What's the median income? What kind of restaurants can they afford? Things like that. So this is going to be, and it ended up, I think it was $1,000, $1,200 to do this study for us. Like I said, we're gonna start putting this information together, and he'll be at your next meeting to go into more details of everything.
So is it your intention to get this in the hands of developers as well, so that
Uh-huh.
we can get retailers, developers, and those kind of folks?
Yep, anybody that does any commercial or retail, we want to get this out to them.
And as we're having discussions, we now have armed with numbers. Hey,
Yeah.
trust me, you will get business.
Yeah, because that's what Andrew was saying, they look at that and they look at traffic counts.
And
So
rooftops.
we've got our own, rooftops, and so we've got the gap analysis tells us that piece of it, how we compare with other businesses. The Public Works has got their own counter, so they're counting intersections and roads for us. So we've got a map that we're creating that's got traffic numbers. And then, of course, the demographic information was part of this study as well. So it tells us how many households, what the median incomes, things like that. So I think now, until we get our traffic study done, which they work on, they change those up. You see the lines going across the roads every so often. So I think we have all the three pieces that they're interested in. And if we can just meet their numbers, like the mayor, he knows, they have, a lot of them have a certain prescription that if you meet this traffic count and these things, then we'll go there. If you don't, we're not even interested, so.
So when we see the things across the road in Bel Air back up and go back up next week.
You're joking, but that used to happen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. All right, with that, I know it is only February and we don't
Guess he's
pass this
walking around.
until August, but it is time to start.
Ted's just happy we want him here, you know?
Light load today, guys.
Yeah, just the very preliminary.
Yeah, I first wanted to touch a little bit on 2018, and then we'll go into Woodlawn project cost estimates. And mainly it's just for the highlights. We will spend 3 different budget workshops to compare lines. I just wanted to kind of go over the general, what happened in 2018. Two of the biggest highlights, of course, is we've had a lot of staff changes, and I think every department felt some type of change this year, and it wasn't necessarily due to any reason. It's just maybe a lot of it to me is the economy's pretty good, and we tend to hire people that are in their coming up, and we train them, and then they leave for better jobs, and that's a good sign because we're pretty picky. And we had a lot of cost savings on staff changes this year, and that's when Ty came to me in, I think, November and said, can we do some painting on the walls and different things? And I said, yeah, we have a lot of savings due to personnel cost. And then that bleeds. I was looking at individuals, I was like, why contractuals not, or why don't we spend as many contractuals as we thought? Well, we don't spend a lot of postage when we don't have a code enforcement officer to send a letter, so that's one example of why we have savings throughout the budget when you might have a vacant position for 6 months or so. My staff personally, we've had three babies in the last 12 months, so there's a lot of savings in that as well, and in different areas. The other biggest one is the Terra Verde. The developer over there decided to keep a couple of his lots, which means he had to make all his past due current, and we used a lot of that savings in order to of savings. That's pretty much the general fund, and again, we'll have a lot of budget to talk about it, but if anything jumps out at you, I can answer some questions. On the revenue side, we collected $67,000 more than what we anticipated. On the property tax, that's kind of due to, it says we're 61,000 under. That was, and we were still in the middle of an abatement reorder, and so it didn't quite catch up with estimates, and I have to go off the estimates when I submit the budget. The biggest highlight in the revenue is the sales tax. We're really doing well in that, and that's mainly due to how they calculate the 1 cent sales tax. Larger cities get more of the share. Because we're growing, we're starting to get more and more of the share. So I usually do like a 3% increase, which is pretty hefty, I thought, but we exceeded that even more. So a lot of good signs with growth. That's everything you want to see. If you flip the page, I think in terms of the first page, I know that people think in terms of graphs, so I wanted to show some graphs for you guys. if someone else wants to see. As you can see, 2017, 2018 spending levels are relatively the same. That shouldn't happen too often just because of inflation and other areas. So don't get used to this chart, but at least we did a good job in 2018 of keeping costs constant. That's for sure. On page 3, water. One of the big ones is we saved a lot of money in water purchase from Wichita. I usually go a little higher because sometimes, like this year, they raised rates 5% on us. We don't know that until they give us a nice month or two, to find out. Also, it all depends on if it's a wet season, dry season. It's pretty average this year, I think. If not a little wet, that means people use less water. If it's really dry, then we're going to have to purchase more water. The biggest thing about both utilities that I have for you guys is, one, we have the utility rate study coming on this year. I'm started the RFP. We're going to get somebody in here to look at it because we did one in 2013 and it ran up in 2018, so it's time to do another one. Also, it will help CCUA and with their expansion efforts. The other thing is I'm working on new payment solutions like we talk about online. You'll be able to go on and view your account online like any normal utility you can. That's going to be great. I can't wait.
It is 2019.
What's that?
It is 2019.
Yeah, that's what I said. In 2019, I'm starting it. But, the other thing, sit down and we finally made some good efforts in the 2019 budget to actually transfer some money from our utilities into the equipment replacement plan. Before, that was the first time that ever happened. So a lot of these numbers you're seeing in our utilities is kind of from the survival mode utilities. So we really, along with this rate study, I want them to get solid numbers on what we need to be doing to replenish our equipment that we use specifically on utilities. Because for a long time, our general funds was propping up, buying a truck and whatnot for the utilities. But a utility should really stand alone, the user fee, user charge. Again, if you keep cycling through, page 4 is a basic graph you can kind of look at. If you have any questions, always contact me in my office. Sewer is about the same as water. The big thing about sewer on the asterisk, trying to wait. Ann and I were waiting to do a lot of rehab projects just in case unexpected repair needed to happen, and we kind of waited a little too long, so a lot of that expenditures will actually happen in 2019, and I think I'll come to you during our regular budget and we'll do a budget amendment, probably up. I think right now it's at $200,000. We're going to do rehab, it might be $300,000 so that we catch up from 2018. But that's something we'll talk about during budget season. But that's why that line is specifically lower. Again, another graph on page 6. A lot of these other funds are pretty much just ones I wanted to show you guys because they're part of us. Page 8 is probably the coolest chart I did. This is all street improvements we've done since 2013, and you can really see the uptick we did starting in 2016, 17, 18, 19. It's kind of neat to see. Later on in my presentation, but in 2018 you can kind of see the expenditure lines we did, and a lot of these bleed over because they're debt projects, but we did about $400,000 in 28 between 2017 and 18. So because 37th and Street from Woodlawn to Rock Paving was straddled fiscal years, so that's why you see a difference. Kind of cool chart. If you keep on going to page 9.
We paid $700,000 for that paving on 37th Street?
That'll be our share, yeah. Total, it was about a little over $2 million project. Third of the whole
all
thing.
over to Woodlawn.
Yeah.
I was thinking Woodlawn to Walk.
No.
Why would you do that? Okay, all right, got it.
It's also really neat. I was talking to Ann. You can, I really want to chart a lot of these these projects because you can see some asphalt repair in 2013 from 45th and Rock, $6,000. We didn't touch that location for a long time, and then you got to reconstruct the whole thing, and it costs a lot more. So Ann and I are already talking about how we can combine our finance with the Public Works office so that we can maybe identify these areas, and maybe if we would have spent $100,000 in 2013, we wouldn't have had to totally reconstruct a street. We don't know, it's a theory, but we're going to try to track some of these projects we do a little better in the future. I wasn't here in 2013, but and that we probably didn't have the money, so.
We did not.
No, we didn't.
No, we did not.
But it's that long-term thinking is what we're really wanting to try to force upon ourselves. Solid waste and stormwater funds, they're pretty much here to see. Stormwater, we're trying to build up a balance so we can address some major issues. Everybody knows that. I missed some printings. I'm sorry, guys. Someone's packet might be wrong.
I've got 9, 10, 11. What do you need?
Okay.
I do too.
What are you looking for?
10. Okay. 10. Bond and interest fund. The biggest thing I want you guys to see as we go into our Woodlawn project is about $2 million in special assessments. That's how much debt's out there that we don't really talk about or even see because it's not city-owned debt, but it's also a liability risk for us that we also need to understand. If, God forbid, something like 2008 happens and we have people defaulting on specials, the city's responsible for that money. So that's kind of what keeps me up at night. Not right now because we're in a good, but that's what you guys pay me to worry about is those types of numbers. I just want to point that out. As we go into the Woodlawn project, I'll show you the effects of that. Other than that, bond and interest, so nothing too crazy. And then the land bank, I think you've seen with the land bank report, sales report, and different things. You'll see that's primarily what we spend all our specials. And because we bought Terra Verde, that Terra Verde expense will come out of land bank now. So that's something we really got to watch as far as where that balance is and where we, if we're going to need to transfer money from the general to the land bank to cover specials. At the very last page is our cash balance, general funds, just over $3 million, which is a little higher than we were projecting when we were budgeting. But again, this is all pretty good when you consider what I'm about to show you next, and what the future holds for us, which is great. But it's always good to have a safety net of that. So go ahead.
Real fast, back on page 10, where did you say the Terra Verde purchase was in the land bank somewhere?
So the Terra Verde purchase would actually be out of the general fund. I talked to our auditors, and they'd rather us purchase out of the general fund. So it was under a capital outlay line in the general fund.
Okay.
Is it $58,000?
I thought we purchased that as part of the land bank.
So yeah, we had to purchase it as a city, and then we're going to deed it over to the land bank.
Okay.
And that's how the auditors wanted us to treat it.
Okay. I just remember that was a land bank discussion. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it was primarily towards the land bank because they're going to pay. The land bank's going to pay for it.
Right.
Every year.
And so that'll happen in 2019.
2019.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just the initial purchase. The $58,000 had to be out of the general to make it. Okay. This one's a little lighter, but a little more on topic. KDOT projects are kind of fun. I tried to make it as simple to understand as possible at the beginning, and then we'll get into the complexities of the 80-20 split and what we owe, what they owe. I tried to highlight the different options with different colors. The biggest asterisk is KDOT share. Back in, May or so they put up an original proposal, and that original amount was $5.2 million. And they say, all right, we'll take 80% of that. So what Ann and I, and they draft the contracts, we sign the contracts. So what Ann and I are saying, let's only count 4.2 million as KDOT shares. So what I did is I took the total project costs of what MKEC said, subtracted 4.2 million, which is KDOT share, which gives us the Bel Air share. From the Bel Air share, I contacted our bond counsel, Adam Pope from Columbia Capital, and said, hey, based on today's rates, 15-year bond, how much is it per $1 million, to bond out? And through that, I got what annual debt service would cost on each one of these projects out of the general fund. The water costs and sewer costs, right now, MKC said $225 for water. We have a pretty good balance in water. I think we can just pay for that, write a check tomorrow for it. The sewer fund, we'll have to see what the sewer expansion on CCUA, but right now we're looking at bonding it. And you can stretch that over 20 years because the sewer lines, especially PVC sewer lines, going to be fine for well over 20 years. But they also gave us a 400 to 800K range, which isn't a very good range at all. So hopefully we tighten that one up. But I just took 600 and said, okay, we'll split the baby on that. Yeah. Probably the major discussion we're going to have tonight is on the street and stormwater itself, what you see under the general fund. But I also want to include the other costs because I know last council meeting at MKC kind of threw it aside, but I want to put it in front of you as well. You look, the 3-lane with signalized intersections, about $157,000 a year added to our debt service. 3-lane roundabout, $174,000. 5-lane signalized intersection, $200, a little under $250,000, and then $265,000 for the 5-lane roundabout. On page 2, this is kind of a realization moment I had when I put this through. The light blue is our land debt and the Woodlawn project, and I just started with the 3-lane. You can see the different 3-lane, 5-lane. I just tried to match so you can compare them front to front. You don't really get much information other than, it's going up a little or a lot. The major thing that I see is, the land debt is growing steadily. That's by design, just FYI. If we didn't have that in 2020, it'd go up $500,000 a year or that year. So that's kind of by design.
So again, this is absolute worst case scenario with the land debt and everything.
Yeah, this is the only.
We don't sell anything.
Well, yeah, this is just land debt, and that's where finances. It all depends on the direction of this council. If we had $1 million $1 million land sale last year, we can do two things. We can put it all in principal, which would retire most of 2034 and keep the remaining structure the same. Or you can put it in our fund and say, hey, this year or for every year, we're going to just throw $100,000 and lower the total amount each year. So you pretty much lower that debt service. And that's for the council to decide what they want to do with that excess. That's a hypothetical, but that's one way to lower your land debt payments is by structuring it so the general fund doesn't have to pay all of it every year. It's kind of like a piggy bank, kind of like the land bank. Exactly like how the land bank works is, hey, we'll supplement some with general and some with the land bank, but it's really the PBC land bank.
So is that a question that we need to answer for
Nope.
the land that we just sold over here?
Nope. For the land, you just, I guess,
Just east of the city hall.
Yeah, whichever direction we're facing.
so the way it operates is all our there's two separate plots of land. There's a PBC land, and then there's city-owned land bank land. Most of the lots are in the land bank, so if you sell a lot, it goes to the land bank. All the industrial park is PBC land.
And that's what's shown here in the graph.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's what's shown in the graph is pretty much all land,
Including the land bank.
including the land bank, just the original debt that we incurred to acquire all the land. The land bank's mainly there so that we have some money to pay special assessments on improvements.
And so there's in the land bank, so anything in the land bank, well, and that's why we created the land bank, is so that you have more discretion over that. So the way that the wording in the PBC was that land owned by the PBC has to go back to the PBC towards debt. Land bank doesn't do that. So really, originally, all the land we owned was in the PBC, and then we took out all of that land except for what's in the industrial park, and then put it in the land bank. So the land bank can actually pay off PBC debt.
And the other big key distinction is in our 2017 refinance. So we did one refinance in 2010, and we just asked our debtor, our basically the bond said, we're just going to pay interest. And the reason that provision's in there that, if we sell a piece of land, we're going to go put it on principal is because we weren't paying any principal at that time. When I refinanced in 2017, we're actually paying principal again, like a normal bond. So it's not really saying we're not paying any principal on that strategy. It's just more of a strategy of, hey, look at all this debt. We have 15 years left. If we sell 1.5 million, we're just going to lower our debt liability each year by 100,000. That's pretty much what. That's a one financial strategy you can use to lower your overall debt. I'm just saying that there's lots of different strategies you can employ. The other thing I want to stress is when we're looking long term, in the next two slides are also long term, there's a reason why we have a yearly budget, because a lot of things change, and you can go up and down, lots of different variables. But this is just graphically showing what a 5-lane versus a 2-lane does to our total debt service. Probably the best, on page 4, I tried to do starting in 2017 actual. I tried to kind of show graphically what we do in the budget season. We pay all our debts, personnel, contractual, commodities, and then if you look in 2017, we had very little red, and red's the land bank and other special shortfall. In 2018, you see it's next to nothing. That's mainly because of Terra Verde. We didn't have to transfer over anything. So that's our biggest risk factor in the next 15, 20 years is how much red are we going to have to pay per year. We're not going to know that until the year comes or until 2 or 3 years out. The green is in 2017. That's when we did the big transfer for street funding, and then we still saved some money because you see the bar charts under our revenues. 2018, about the same thing. We're under. 2019, this is the way we budget. We take care of all our debts. The big red is mainly because we're saying, hey, we know we got to pay Terra Verde, so we're going to have some transfer out, but we're also going to budget a little bit more just in case there's unexpected expenses we find. The rest we're going to transfer to street improvements, and that's what that green is. From 2020 on, what I did is took pretty much inflation numbers for personnel, contractuals, and commodities. I got 2% revenue growth, mainly to be a little more on the conservative side, because this is not meant to show you what's going to happen. This means let's look at kind of some of the worst case scenario type stuff. We grew 3.56% from 17 to 18. From 18 to 19, we're expected to go 3.5 as far as total revenues. What would scare me is if that red line was in the middle of our debt service. That would be very scary. That means we're counting on all the right stuff to happen to do just fine. But as you can tell, and this is with a 3-year or 3-lane, just the very basic has that included in our debt. as you can tell, once our land debt's taken care of, it's going to be smooth sailing for the rest of the world, the rest of the time. But there's a few years in there where I said, hey, it's good we got a good reserve. I don't think we're in any trouble at all. But if we somehow 1 or 2 years need to tap on the reserve, it's already there. The problem is when we don't have a reserve, what's going to happen is we either have to raise rates, or we have to furlough employees, or we're going to have to, do drastic things. And so that's why I'm not. That's why I'm really protective over our ending our reserve limit, because that makes your job a lot easier when you look 10 years down the road, or really between
Protect those reserves like mama bear.
between 2023 and 2028, 9. That's when.
And so we keep the reserve at least 30%, right? That's the
30% is the rule right now.
And so I remember late last year, we went ahead and we actually funded some bonds, where we basically provided a loan because we had excess cash reserves. Why would we bond all of the Woodlawn project if we have some extra cash reserves over the 30%? What are your thoughts there?
So, if you flip back,
Sort of just, paying for it.
the way we bond, as you can see, the Woodlawn project, the bulk of it doesn't come on until 2024. We would temp note in 2019, have 3 years, and then start paying on the 4th. So it's 2024. That gives us ample time. What if we sell $2 million in land in the next 2 years? It's a strategy to kind of let's wait and see where we're at in 2024. Now, if we wanted to buy our own, or say we use some of our reserves to fund Woodlawn, that wouldn't necessarily defer that. We could purchase our own temp note, but we'd eventually probably have to bond it out by the 2024. And I'm trying to get your question. You mean anything over 30% we throw at Woodlawn? Is that what you're suggesting or looking at?
So what if we've got if our part of it's going to be $1.5 million, just for a round number, what if we've got $1.5 million in our account over the 30% reserve?
Mm-hmm.
Would we just put that on Woodlawn instead of bonding that out?
Well, and that's a strategy. The county seems, right now, bond rates are pretty low, and that's kind of where a lot of people lean towards is, hey, it's lower money. We can stretch out a long-term asset longer, or you can pay cash for it and hope we keep growing the way we grow. I mean, it's really a risk reward type. You're paying a little bit of interest for the security of keeping a higher than normal reserve, or maybe cash. My strategy since I've gotten here is, hey, let's take care of what we needed, and any extra reserves, let's find street projects to fully fund.
And I'm not saying that's necessarily what I think we should do. I'm
Sure.
Understand here.
Okay, so just to understand the strategy here, you're going to, in 2024, capitalize all the interest on the temp note into a long-term note. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. And
It'd be 2023, but yeah.
in 2020, yeah, the payment is
The payment's
2024, right?
No.
So, okay,
So you will be paying a little bit. I think our last temp note was 1 point.
and what interest rate are we seeing today on bonds?
Should probably ask that. 2.
Almost 3%.
Yeah.
2.8.
Yeah. What did we do last time we temp noted, or that?
Just under 3%?
Yeah.
That's
Take 3%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking that is because, I see the Federal Reserve has, in the last several months, raised rates, and it looks like if the economy stays as robust as it is, well, they'll continue to raise rates because they're trying to keep that inflation rate down, and that's how you do that. Okay, it raises the cost of money. Okay, so and so the projection. I mean, you used, I don't know what interest rate you used on the capitalized portion of this, but.
Yeah, I can ask Adam, but I'm not sure. He just used today.
He probably used today.
When I was making it,
And so
It might be substantially higher.
might be higher
Yeah,
at the time
yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
and that's just a question. I know nobody has that crystal ball what it's going to be. Okay, I get that. Okay, so then I do have a couple other questions. Is in the WAMPO website, they're showing a $971,000 construction engineering cost that I don't see in your numbers at all. And I don't know if that was just an oversight or if that's someplace else.
971,000.
Yeah.
You want to,
Construction engineering, not preliminary engineering. We've got the preliminary engineering.
Yeah, that was
work
the
right now.
570.
That's the 570, but another 971,000.
should be wrapped up in the 5.5.
It's shown separately. If you look on their website, it is shown separately. And I have a,
We can go grab the,
Is the total different, Jim? Are you
Yes.
saying it's
yes,
more?
it's 971,000 higher.
That would be the construction observation, it may have been told,
Their part,
listed
south of the
differently.
railroad tracks.
But the numbers that WAMPO has came off of the spreadsheet that I gave them and that we gave to KDOT.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. I just wondered why I wasn't seeing it here.
They split
Okay, so
our part.
Yeah, so you're saying the total project cost might be more like 7 million?
right, yeah.
it should be wrapped up in that construction total, shouldn't it? And
In which construction total?
so when
The
the 5.5.
The construction estimates that MKEC gave us.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I'm looking at that and I do not see
Yeah,
that they do not have the construction observation, construction engineering.
And I do know on the WAMPO side it is separately listed.
They have it on,
It's separate listed as Bel Air's responsibility.
Is that drawn on or
The way,
that right there?
those are the estimates that I sent you from MKEC.
And these are the ones I've been going off of with MKC. That's what Ann said.
I think you might have mentioned at one point that there might be a possibility of going back to WAMPO and asking for some additional funding as well.
I think there is. I think once we decide on configuration,
Okay.
cost, then we should do a tip amendment and see what they can do for us. Because right now, as of today's meeting, and this is a moving target, okay? Last month, their excess from was a negative number. I can't remember what it was. This month, the 2019 excess is 415,000. So it's kind of a volatile moving target, but they are, and I will be bringing to you as soon as they are able to email it to me, a list of options that they want to determine what to do with this excess money. Okay, so there's like 11 of them, but they've narrowed it down to 5 that they're going to throw out at us.
I think put it on the Woodlawn project is.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
they know that they're probably going to have an excess in 2019. They had an excess in 2018. They know that that's going to happen.
So we need to
whether-
kind of get to a resolution on the configuration sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
if we
but this
wanna
is a
make that.
2020 project, so they haven't even started looking at their excesses for 2020 because they're
Because they
still
won't
2019.
approve that into, okay.
Yeah, but they can approve additional funds in the TIP amendment now for 2020.
And one of the things, if we're talking about going back to WAMPO, Jeff and I were just having a sidebar back over here, and he brings up a good point. Is Wichita or Sedgwick County paying anything towards their portion of the road?
See, there's nothing I've seen in there, but I certainly, you and I talked about that months ago,
Yeah.
about the possibility of going to them and saying, hey,
Wichita
how about helping with this?
will not, because they don't have any, it doesn't
So we'll
affect
leave the
them at
Wichita
all.
Road the way it is, and we'll fix it.
Yeah, but Sedgwick County does. They own part of Woodlawn, and so we need to have that discussion with them.
Yeah.
And so I think there's two things that may give us some extra cash if we can. And then we'll ask, when the numbers actually come in higher than they are, we'll ask WAMPO for some more money too.
Right.
So I think we're going to look at worst case and hopefully
Which
it's
is
better
what
than
this is.
that. Yeah.
I think
Buy
Ann's
some of
going
these
to double check, because everything I've seen, that's interesting.
Yeah, they show it on the website, in fact, and
So two things I think you would look at as far as on the funding is there's one piece of it where it's kind of philosophical thought of, okay, so if you pay for it all today, then people today are paying for it and future people that drive the road aren't paying for it, or property owners. years. So the idea when you spread something out over 15 years or something is that you're not paying for all the road today, because someone that's living here in 10 years is going to start paying for it as well, because that's part of our bond and interest. We have to, that's part of the tax money. So if any of you would, or any person living here today would sell in 5 years, then they're only going to pay 5 years worth of that road, and somebody that buys that house is going to pay the rest, and they're going to use it. So that's one philosophical, ethical dilemma on whether you pay today or not. Then the other piece is is you take out 1.5 million or whatever out of your reserves, then that takes away your ability to, in the next year, say, we really need to do some more road work on X road, and it's 200,000. So can we pull some out of our out of our reserves and fix that road? Because at that point, when we're down at 30%, we really shouldn't be using that for anything other than sitting there for an emergency. So that would be the other thought to think about is, are we just going to take our money out, just drain the reserve today and pay for that? Or should we fund it and then let other people pay for it, or people that are here using it later, and keep that money so that we can do special projects that come up between now and 15 years?
Hey, Ty.
Yep.
I know KDOT has a lot of restrictions and things we have to live within to make sure that we qualify and all that. Do they care how we would pay, like with what Justin's saying, versus whether we bond it or any of that? Does that affect?
They don't. Nope. All they do is they tell us, they prove what the plan is, make sure it meets their standards for road width and depth and all that, and that they're giving us X amount. That's it.
Okay, well, that helps. Thank you for that clarification.
What's
My main concern is just the total amount of debt that I'm seeing, right? And we have that land bank debt to deal with that not everyone else has, and so we've just got to be mindful of how much debt we have.
And then the other thing is, which again, we don't know, because our goal is going to be to drop that debt payments by selling land and, those types of things.
But we can't count on that.
Nope. So we don't want to
Which
show
is another
that.
reason why, yeah, you do want to bond this.
And that's the original estimate that was submitted to KDOT.
Right.
Said.
So the construction engineering is on here,
Yeah.
but it isn't in their total.
Yeah, it's just in the, I guess it's in the participating column, and that's what confuses me. That original amount, 5 point some, it's actually the construction total plus the inspection equals the project total, which the product, what I label in my chart is just construction. That's actually the total of
But
what I call construction.
Did your number come from this or from the engineering estimates?
From the engineering, that's a concern now.
The question is, did the engineering include
Did the
those
engineering
costs?
include that cost or not? And that might change some things. MKC.
MKEC's estimate does not include.
Okay, so yeah, it would go up.
So we do need to add to this.
It would go up 800 or yeah, 791.
And the other thing that I didn't recognize, and I just now realized, but I did have it in these numbers, is the utilities of 570,000, which I didn't have.
Were utilities in the MKEC?
So
I thought I may have seen those.
yeah, the two utilities underneath the general fund on my thing. Those are what the MKC estimate is for the
That's
utilities.
the water and sewer?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So that includes, because I thought they said something during the presentation that does not include moving utilities, but it does.
The estimates that I have for the breakdown for each lane does not include utilities. The utilities, it was the 225,000 for water and the 400,000 to 800,000 for sewer, depending on what we find with the visual inspection.
Okay.
So if Ted's numbers, I think Ted's numbers include that.
Okay.
Amounts.
Yep, it's just down in the lower section.
Did they have to move any other? I didn't think there was any other utilities that need to be moved. Was there?
As far as,
Like a gas and electric?
since those utilities are located within the right-of-way, those companies are responsible for 100% of those costs.
Okay.
So the city as a whole is not responsible responsible for those other utility costs.
Okay.
And then the sewer, we should be finding out within probably the next month as to whether it's going to be closer to the 400 or closer to the 800.
Okay.
The CE, it's 791.
Yeah, it's 791 too. That's when you're dealing with three different people's numbers right there. So I'll update this spreadsheet and have it to you tomorrow morning. First thing.
Catch, Jim.
Yeah.
To me, and this is just not a replacement. I think what you got there is a great thing, a great tool with an update. This is what I want to pass out here is a little different look at what these costs, the project costs are with the WAMPO, assuming WAMPO funds everything. So if you want to just pass those around, and I'll hand one to.
Is that in, can that not happen?
Can that happen? Well,
So what are we getting
you
here?
have to make assumptions, right?
Are you saying assuming they give us an
Assuming they give us an increase under the four scenarios. Now, the first thing up here is broken down into 5 sections here, and I'm sorry for the small type, but there's only it's going to get on one page. The first thing is what WAMPO actually shows for this project on the website today, okay? And then the second section is the option of 3 lanes with a traffic signalized intersection, and then 3 lanes with a roundabout, and 3 lanes with 5 lanes with a signalized traffic, and 5 lanes with roundabout. So what I came up with on this is assuming they approve the 80% of the construction costs of these 3 scenarios that are out of pocket for the first scenario, the first scenario is $3,061,200, and the second option is a $3,091,200. The third be $3,293,200, and the fourth is $3,311,200. And so that's the money that we have to come up with. Okay, the difference from the first option to the last option is $250,000. So the difference in cost to me is kind of a negligible issue for this size of a project. Really, what I'm interested in is what do the citizens want us to do? Okay, and I think we should do whatever they want us to do. But that's my opinion, and I'm not trying to sway anybody in that respect. I just wanted you to see these numbers, and this is the analysis, the way that WAMPO's website shows the numbers. Okay, it's not. I didn't come up with this. I mean, I came up with this column over here, but that's only an analysis of these numbers here. Okay, so
Where's the rail portion of the 3 to 5 difference?
it's not calculated. It's not shown laid out here. Mm-hmm. But if you just calculate the 3. Wait a second. It is 2, I think. Just a second.
Is it built into the MKEC?
It is, and that's what jumped out
Yeah,
at
here it
me.
is. Here it is. It's the delta here from the first alternative.
250,000.
250,000 is the delta from this alternative here, not from the original plan. It's from this alternative. Okay. The delta from the original plan is 347,000, but that's because we need to go for a change on this plan.
We need to get together then.
Yeah.
Because this
That's fine.
750 is what I have for the reconstruction of that rail from a 3-lane to 5-lane, that MKC.
Well, that's out of pocket. The
Yeah,
difference is
yeah.
not the difference in the cost. The difference in the cost is
Oh, I see what you mean. Your delta.
80%.
yeah.
Well, the WAMPO's not going to pay 80% of the rail.
No.
It's going to be 100%, but that's what he's saying is the delta. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to.
No, that's fine. I
understand.
We need to ask questions, otherwise we don't.
Yeah.
We're all on the same page. The difference in the cost of these projects is about $250,000 from cheapest to the most expensive total cost. Okay. So yeah, I'll be happy. I'm coming over tomorrow afternoon anyway, so I can.
Let's
take
talk.
some time to talk. Okay.
Yeah, make sure we're seeing the same
Sure,
thing.
sure. Set that.
And
You can clarify with MKC.
that's what we really
Yeah.
need is to clarify MKC's numbers. And we just got some yesterday afternoon that really just shows what they're spending on the construction side. So, the biggest thing I want to drill down is how much we're going to get from KDOT or WEMPA, because that's really what's going to make or break it.
Right.
Like you're saying, I was too afraid to say we can match that construction total 80-20 because I'm not too sure. Because the only thing we have is a contract saying, hey, we're going to say it's the original amount, and we're only going to match up to the 80% of that. So it's really hard to say, and it's fine if we want to estimate it. That's the hard part for me is to come and present. I'm glad you brought something.
I understand that, but when we were interviewing the different engineering firms, and Jeff will remember this, one of the particular things we were asking about is, can you assist us in getting a TIP amendment?
Okay,
And I think all of them said they would. Am I correct about that? Do you remember it that way? I know these guys said they
basically,
would.
yeah.
I think they all said they would do that.
They'll work with us to do
Right.
it, obviously.
Right,
Not gonna do it
Right.
for us, but yeah.
So, okay. So, anyway, if you have any questions about this, just feel free to ask them, but, that just was my quick analysis of cost. I wasn't looking at the budget side. I think that's your area.
Good luck.
So, okay.
Alrighty. Anything else we need to go over this evening?
I do have one other thing I would like to ask you to consider, and related to this project, and that is rather than do a survey monkey survey, is to get a registered voter survey. So I just have a draft proposal here. I did get some cost out on this. And this is the draft proposal of what that survey would look like. And of course, as we finalize the numbers, we'll refine the numbers in the proposal as well. But the reason I think we would be wise to do this is because we've had a couple situations happen. SurveyMonkey is, you don't have any control of who answers that survey. Registered voters, they send in a mail-in card. We can quickly compile that data and get some good information. And it would be restricted to registered voters, so you're not getting, I'm not saying that Jeff would do this, but Jeff's 4 kids aren't going in there and voting as well. It's just Jeff and his wife who are the registered voters. So we get a feel of what the registered voters really want us to do with these 3 options, or 4 options. Anyway, that is a draft proposal. The cost to do this, it can be done for under $2,500. That's getting the registered voter list and then getting this published and mailed out. And they would pay the stamp, mail it back unless we have a business number we want to give them.
Can we have a self-addressed stamped envelope? I mean, can we have that indicia on there, or?
Yeah, we could, if we did like a card or something.
Yeah.
Because you can put a postage number on there. For
the idea of this would be...
That way we can have a double indicia.
Like the WSU survey, that was done that way, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that a
Yeah, it's done
self-addressed
something
thing?
like that. The design of this is that everything below the line would be that return card.
Yeah,
Okay?
sure.
And then if we want to put the Bel Air thing on there. Anyway, something to consider. Obviously, we can't make a decision about this tonight because we can only do that in the council meeting. But just wanted to...
I really like this idea, so thanks for bringing this up.
Okay? So, just suggestions.
I have received some feedback from people in the community on our use of, the electronic surveys and how that doesn't necessarily hit all of the audience in Bel Air, and sending something in the mail to people for something as big as this might be warranted.
There's about 5,300 registered voters in Bel Air today. About. That's a rough number. Okay? So, just for think, just food for thought. If we wanted to do this before the, we probably couldn't get this done before the open house. Just talking with the people that do this work, they said it takes them 4 days to turn the project, and they get it out, well, they'll be lucky if they get it in the mail before the open house.
And that's a county that does that.
There's a company that does this, yes.
Oh, a private company does
Yeah,
it?
it's a private company.
Oh,
that does
okay.
this. Yeah. The county would give us, the election office would give us a registered voter.
Right.
Data, and that's $4 or $5. That's pretty cheap. Yeah.
So this is kind of the survey you're thinking?
Yeah.
That would go out?
That's
Do you
what
have
I'm.
the name of the company or that does this, or? Because that's what we want to
I
contact,
do have,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
I do have
To do this for us.
Right.
Now, do they get the voters, or do we get that and give it to
I think
them?
we get it.
Especially 300 seems awfully high for a town of 7,500.
That's what they were saying, and
That's my only
We'll
concern,
get the-
is to make sure they're not doing by
Well-
zip code, that they're actually
Yeah,
doing.
it's-
I looked at it, it was
Is it really?
4,600
Wow.
when we were running. Okay, so it went up a little bit from there.
Okay.
It's a
Okay.
phenomenon.
So I'm-
That's awesome.
Not
I mean, I wasn't accusing, I'm just saying, wow.
I know,
Holy cow, okay.
but I did know that. So this is the company, Angel Mailing. These are the estimates, you're welcome to have those. if you'd like.
Okay.
There were three toproposals there, but I only took the cheapest one. Because the other's just like, okay, I think we can work with this, right? Anyway, but yeah, she has 3 proposals in
You
there.
know, we talked about citizen engagement being real important, so.
Yeah.
Especially on this project, I think it's really important, and having the information on here where people can get more, either on our website or the other options that are available, I think would be important there as well.
And I'll be happy to help try to compile the information, create spreadsheets for data entry and that kind of stuff.
So do they don't do, that's not
They
part of
don't,
this?
that's not part of the deal. No, we'd have to compile the data and do the summaries and all that stuff. But this can be done on our spreadsheet.
I can
pretty
also
quickly.
help with that, it's pretty easy.
If you can help with a fast data entry process, that would be even better, but I'm not good at that. I'm good at setting up a
Software
spreadsheet.
designer.
I'm sorry?
Except we only knew a software engineer. designer. Above my pay grade. All righty. Well, guys, good information, good conversations. We're looking at 2 really big projects coming down the pike that I think can really improve our city for the long term, not just today, but for the future. And I look forward to us continuing to have these conversations about these projects and where they go and how they move. So, anything else we want to bring up in tonight's workshop? If not, we'll get out of here.
The biggest thing then is that rail, if they don't pick up 80% on the rail, then